Mangwana ni malelepo vukenjani buribwanji kekwas dumelang manave Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning, the news and current affairs show that remains your portal into Africa's most potent stories. Later in the show, we will be joined by Rorisang Mogojwe, who is in Gaborone, Botswana, as she delivers the Botswana Report. But prior to that, these are some of the stories we're looking at from broader Africa. South Africa sees widespread anti-migrant marches under heavy police security. Kinshasa bans public gatherings amid expanding Ebola outbreak. UN warns Ebola crisis could cost Africa up to $3.6 billion. And in an update with the Nation TV story from Uganda, the media group is holding talks after the military shutdown of the stations. DSTV285 GOTV 25 1up2.com, Network Media Hub, and NTVAFRIKA.MY.NA. That is precisely where you can watch us. Top stories shortly.
Namibia is a land of movement, with waves that never stop reaching forward. Here, adventure is not something we search for. It is something we are born into. In every corner of this country, creativity rises. From artists, from athletes, from dreamers. And when the world comes to explore Namibia, they discover something extraordinary. Because when sport moves people, creativity moves ideas, and tourism moves the world toward us. Something powerful happens. A platform where movement meets imagination, where industries connect, where opportunity grows, where Namibia's next chapter begins. Welcome to the Creative Sport Tourism Expo. Exhibit, partner, experience. Creative Sport Tourism.
Thousands of anti-migrant protesters marched across South Africa after an unofficial deadline demanding undocumented migrants leave the country, with demonstrations drawing large crowds in Durban, Johannesburg, Cape Town, and other cities. While many marches remained peaceful, scattered violence, looting, and clashes with police were reported in several areas, including Soweto, Tembisa, and Pietermaritzburg. Police arrested suspected looters while the military remained on standby as security forces monitored the nationwide demonstrations. The protest movement's leader, Jacinta Ngobese, warned that weekly marches would continue for the next 6 months until their demands were met. The unrest follows weeks of attacks that have left at least 4 people dead and forced thousands of foreign nationals to flee their homes or leave South Africa altogether. President Cyril Ramaphosa acknowledged public concerns over illegal immigration, but stressed that protests cannot justify intimidation, vandalism, or violence. Officials say more than 100 criminal cases have already been opened against anti-foreigner vigilantes. Now, in the upcoming clip, it is going to be rather harrowing, at least the details. There will be no visuals that will be disturbing, but the details will be. Why? Because a lot of political analysts have been saying that there happens to be a trickle-down effect or trickle-up effect, because it often stems from tribalism, xenophobia. That is, for a lot of people marching in South Africa, it's not just marching against foreigners, it's marching against anyone who is not like them. And in this video, a South African citizen describes the harassment of herself and her family in spite of being a Tonga person.
Here in the area, just to get a sense from her in terms of when the marches came in, what really happened and what she witnessed, in fact. Thank you so much for your time. You were telling us that your doors are broken at this point. What happened? Tell us the moment when the marches came in.
What happened is that everyone just came in. As you can see, our gate is damaged. They just started saying us We are Tsongas, we are South African Tsongas, but they started calling my dad Ikwere Kwere because he's Tsonga. At some point, they were taking him to the van to be deported. And I was like, my dad, he's not foreign national, he's a South African. They were like, we don't care, he's Tsonga. So they even went inside our houses, doors are broken. They even took my sister out of the shower while she was showering, naked. So we are saddened because it's also this peaceful march was not peaceful for us South African nationals. It affected our home, our sisters. My sister, she's traumatized now. So I'm saddened. I plead with the president to do something about this, because now where are we going to sleep? It's no longer safe for us to sleep. Our doors are broken, gates are broken. What's with our security as South African citizens? So
thank you very much for your time. And they were also just telling us, how cell phones were also stolen in the house during that time. You must remember, since then, police did detain some of the marchers for public violence. And the family was also telling us that some of them have since went to the police station to open a case. But I also want to bring in Mama also, who also witnessed as the marchers came inside the house. Mama, you can come closer, perhaps just to talk about the situation and maybe how you felt as you saw them come into your house.
We're certainly grateful to the South African Broadcasting Corporation for distributing those clips. So as you can see, there are a lot of layers to what is happening with regards to South Africa. Some political analysts are alleging that there are international funders behind this who would benefit from the image of unrest in South Africa. We certainly know that this will affect the economy of South Africa, and we'll be paying attention to all of this as Ubuntu is apparently redefined. Moving on to our next story. The Democratic Republic of Congo has banned mass gatherings in Kinshasa and the provinces of Chopo, Gauteng and Basuele as authorities seek to prevent the spread of Ebola beyond the 3 eastern provinces where infections have been confirmed. The outbreak has been detected in Ituri, North Kivu and South Kivu. But officials fear it could spread in Kinshasa, a city of 18 million people. Opposition figures, including Prince Epenge of the Lamuka Coalition and Rodrigue Ramazani of Envo, criticized the decision, alleging it was intended to block a protest planned for 8 July against a proposed law that critics say could allow President Felix Tshisekedi to remain in office beyond his 2-term limit. The government has not responded to those claims. A doctor who later tested positive for Ebola in France had traveled through Kinshasa after working at an Ebola treatment center. Authorities subsequently ordered a 21-day quarantine for travelers leaving affected areas. Confirmed cases rose by 47 to 1,274, while the death toll increased to 360, according to the Interior Ministry. Now, let's talk the numbers. The United Nations has warned that the ongoing Ebola outbreak could cost Africa up to $3.6 billion and result in the loss of hundreds of thousands of jobs, raising concerns that the health emergency could develop into a wider development crisis. The Bundibugyo strain of Ebola, for which there is currently no tested vaccine or treatment, has infected 1,307 people and claimed 377 lives in the Democratic Republic of Congo since the outbreak was declared on 15 May, according to the government. Uganda has also recorded a smaller number of infections, while experts have warned the disease could spread to neighboring countries, including South Sudan. United Nations Development Programme President Representative Damien Mama said the outbreak could still be contained if sufficient resources were mobilized quickly, preventing further losses. However, he cautioned that failure to act could transform the health emergency into a prolonged regional and continental development crisis. The UNDP outlined 3 possible scenarios, with the best case outcome estimating a $1 billion impact on Congo's GDP if the outbreak remains contained. Now, the leading East African media organization is now holding discussions with Uganda's military. This is Nation Media Group, after soldiers shut down 6 newspapers, radio stations, and television outlets owned by the Kenya-headquartered group. Managing Director Susan Tsibirwa said negotiations are continuing at different levels while staff remain unable to access their offices. Uganda's military chief Muhoozi Kainerugaba, who is also President Yoweri Museveni's son, ordered the closure of the Daily Monitor and NTV Uganda on Sunday, saying they would not reopen without his permission, although he gave no specific reason. ICT and National Guidance Minister Justine Kasule Lumumba said the disruption followed a security-led inquiry ordered by President Museveni involving the Uganda People's Defense Forces, the Criminal Investigations Directorate, other security agencies and experts. Amnesty International said at least 6 outlets were shut down, including the Daily Monitor, Nation TV, Dembe FM, Spark TV, KFM, and the East African. U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chair Jim Risch urged the United States to review its security relationship with Uganda following the closures. All right, those have been our top stories on Africa Good Morning. Shortly, we will be joined by Rorisang Mogojwe as he delivers the Botswana Report. All right, it's time for Rorisang Mogojwe to break down the Botswana Report. In your first story, Rorisang, one lawyer receives the majority of Botswana's outsourced state legal fees, and we're talking to amounts about of 6.5 million pula.
Thank you, Ashwin. Now, the revelation came to light that government has spent approximately 11.1 million pula on 25 civil litigation matters that were handled by external lawyers that were outsourced between 2021 and 2026. And of that amount, one attorney received 6.5 million pula for just 4 cases, which essentially accounted for almost 60% of the total expenditure on outsourced legal services during the period under review. Now, this disclosure comes as the Public Accounts Committee continues to examine government expenditure and measures that are aimed to improve accountability and value for money in the public sector. And during his appearance, Attorney General Dick Bayford also briefed the committee on government's response to the forensic audit, which examined financial management across 30 public entities. And this audit identified widespread governance failures, procurement irregularities, and systemic weaknesses that could have resulted in potential losses, which were estimated at up to 33 billion pula. And so the Attorney General told the committee that his office is actually prepared to act on any recommendations that would require legal intervention once the audit process is concluded. And so the Public Accounts Committee is expected to continue scrutinizing these findings as government considers the next step, which will arise from the forensic audit.
Thank you very much, Rorisang. But we are staying with legal fees as the Botswana government is fighting an 80 million rand legal fees claim. And this is by Bridget Motsepe Radebe.
Attorney General Dick Bayford says the claim is excessive and should therefore undergo judicial taxation, which is a legal process in which the court will then determine whether the legal fees charged are reasonable and justified. Now, this claim, if you may recall, Ashwin, stems from the high-profile butterfly case in which Motsepe Radebe was accused of financing terrorism and money laundering in Botswana alongside former President Ian Khama and intelligence officer Wilhelmina Maswabi, also known as Butterfly. Now, these allegations were, however, later withdrawn, and the government was then ordered by the High Court to issue a formal public apology to the South African businesswoman. Now, Bayford told the Parliamentary Public Accounts Committee that government has already spent approximately 500,000 pula to broadcast that very apology on platforms operated by the SABC as part of efforts to comply with that settlement. He says that the government has now approached the High Court to contest these latest legal costs, and he maintains that the amount claimed should be independently reviewed before any sort of payment is considered. And so the High Court is now expected to determine whether the legal fees that have been claimed by Bridget Motsepe Radebe are fair and reasonable under the circumstances.
All right, Rorisang, let's cap off with Botswana's economy as the country's global competitiveness ranking is falling.
The 2026 report ranks Botswana 66th out of 70 economies that were assessed worldwide, down from 59th place in last year's index. Now, these annual rankings evaluate countries based on factors such as economic performance, as well as government efficiency and business efficiency. And so, according to the report, Botswana's decline reflects a combination of structural and economic challenges that continue to affect the country's ability to compete internationally. And among these key concerns that were highlighted are the economy's continued reliance on diamond revenues, as well as the widening fiscal pressures that we see currently ongoing, and the persistently high youth unemployment in Botswana. And so the report also points to the recurring foot and mouth disease outbreak as an ongoing threat to Botswana's livestock industry and beef exports, both of which remain important contributors to the national economy. And so analysts say that these findings actually reinforce the need to accelerate economic diversification by expanding growth in other sectors outside of diamonds, such as manufacturing, tourism, technology, and services, while at the same time creating an environment that will encourage greater private sector investment.
All right, so the El Nino weather pattern remains a concern heading into the 2026-27 agricultural season. But South Africa is better placed to navigate such conditions from a grain supplies perspective. And this is according to agriculture expert Wandile Sihlobo. Before we cross over to his video from his ex describing where South Africa's position is with regards to El Nino heading into the agriculture season, we're going to go ahead and say goodbye on Africa. Good morning, DSTV285, GOTV25, 1up2.com, Network Media Hub, and NTVAFRIKA.MY.NA. NTV Africa. The Africa is spelt with a K. We'll return tomorrow with more news from South Africa, certainly getting more news with regards to the anti-migrant protests from our correspondent who is in Cape Town, Adi Hochad, and of course the stories from broader Africa. But as promised, here is Wandile Sihlobo. Please do follow him on his ex-Twitter page, as he usually has got very helpful updates with regards to agriculture in Southern Africa.
Folks, as South Africa, we are about 4 months to the start of the 2026-27 summer crop season. That's your maize, sunflower, soybean, dry beans, peanuts, and the likes. And we are heading towards an El Nino weather phenomenon. That's what the South African Weather Service is saying. Many weather forecasters across the world, they've been signaling that for some time. And others are saying this will be one of the strongest or most challenging El Nino. The question is still out there whether this will be a multi-season or it will be just as intense, but one season. That's what we will still, we are yet to see, all of us. But this morning, as I sat in various meetings, I've noticed many people were messaging me. I think that they are beginning to write a couple of stories as we head towards the start of the new season, asking about how worried are we about the El Nino and what are our thoughts about that. And my broad answer has been that, look, nothing has changed from what we have signaled already in a number of our notes and the videos, which is that we're heading towards a concerning season ahead because an El Nino in South Africa and much of Southern Africa means that there's a higher possibility of below normal rainfall. But it's always unclear until we are really in there as to how intense this will be. Some South Africans may recall the 2014-15, 15-16 droughts. That period was very difficult. It led to devastation in livestock, field crops, and the likes. But we also had a mild one somewhere around 2018-19 and a midsummer drought around 2024. All of those had varying impact on the crops. But I think the 2014-15, 15-16, that was in recent memory the most challenging period. This time around is different from all of those too, because we've received La Nina rains this year, and in fact, for much of South Africa, we were receiving rains through to the beginning of May. And that means that the soil moisture in the water table across South Africa and even the grazing belt is in a better condition than in those years. Just about a day ago, I was talking about how the Karoo region and the Kalahari region of South Africa are so beautiful to an extent that the sheep farmers in those areas and livestock farmers are saying they've never seen that area being this beautiful. That also means then that the grazing belt for them is excellent in that area. So we are heading towards this season with that better start than the recent droughts that we've had. If then we could be able to get rain and get it in appropriate time as farmers plant, we get nice follow-up rain, then that means that in terms of the crop output, things may not be as bad as others anticipate. The other positive, at least for now, which we had signaled in the past as a worrying issue, was the fact that fertilizer prices, fuel prices were very high because of the war in the Middle East. With now the Strait of Hormuz open and this peace deal, which we hope will hold for some time, will help in lowering the input costs for farmers, because that's the big issue that we're worried about in addition to that. So from mid-October, in the eastern regions of South Africa, folks will start preparing the land, getting ready to plant, and in some of the western regions of the country, some from around about mid-November, they will start to prepare to plant. But I think the updates on the weather outlook that we will get towards that period will also be as informative. But I think the core point is that the soil moisture is better this time around. These longer rainfall periods are helping. And for the livestock farmers as well, I mean, the grazing belt is not in a messy situation like in the past that we have. But of course, the other thing that the farmers will consider in their decision this time around is also the issues of profitability. I mean, the commodity prices are low because we've had an excellent season. I mean, the season we are closing, the 2025-26 production season, it's a record summer grain and oilseeds in South Africa, about 21.1 million tons. So all of this is at a time where even internationally there's a lot of grains, there's a lot of oilseeds, and much of this is putting pressure on the prices. So there is a profitability conversation that the farmers will have. But in a nutshell, we are concerned about an El Nino. Its impact will be clear over time, but we are going to start the next season in a better footing than we've seen in the past. That's the real point to all of the folks that had sent some of their points asking about how are we thinking about this. Cheers, folks.